Hi, this is Raina Rakicki from the Podcast Growth Club podcast. I joined Adam's online business academy for podcasters because I needed help not only with growing my own podcast coaching business, but also for my clients. It has been super helpful because he lays everything out into different sections and you can hyper analyze where your funnel's not working. You know, whether it's from your email engagement to the type of lead magnets you have. It's incredible. In addition, Adam has some rad spreadsheets that would take us hours upon hours to do ourselves, but he just hands them out to us. I can't think of anything that's better than that. Thanks so much, Adam. The Online Business Academy has been a game changer, not only for myself, but also for my clients.
Hey there, Pod Pals. Do you feel like you could use a little bit of help with your podcast launch, growth, or with converting your podcast listeners into becoming your best clients? I want you to head on over to my website, www.podcastingbusiness.school, and watch the 4-minute video that talks about who I help and exactly how I can help them out. Next, I want you to click on the Discovery Call button to set up a free podcast profit potential discovery call where we can talk about working together to help you reach your podcasting and online business goals. Head on over to my website, www.podcastingbusiness.school, and get signed up for your free podcast profit potential discovery call. What's up, Pod Pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you're listening to Podcasting Business School. It's a show where I teach podcasters simple strategies to help them make more money with their online business. And today we're talking about one of my hottest topics for 2025, and that is email list growth, email marketing. And I was recently introduced to our guest today, Mike Millner, by one of my Online Business Academy members. And I've been diving into his content. His Instagram stuff is off the hook. I must have clicked on something because I'm getting all the ads too, Mike. Like I'm in the algorithm. I'm in the Mike Millner algorithm, but I'm super impressed. I'm excited to have you on the show. And I just want to say welcome to Podcasting Business School, Mike.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I call it my spider web. Once you click on the link, you get caught in my spider web and there's no escape.
There is no escape. Like Mike is everywhere on my feed, on Facebook, on Instagram, on the stories. All I see all day, Mike. And I want to definitely talk about that strategy too, because that has piqued my interest. But I want to start off with kind of like your origin story of just kind of describe the turning point of when you realized that you could start leveraging email marketing to get more coaching clients for your health business. Let's maybe start there.
Yeah. So it's not an exciting story. It's actually what I call a happy accident. When I started out as a coach, I started as a personal trainer, then got into nutrition coaching. I started working for another company as a nutrition coach, and I worked my way up as to one of their head coaches. And I was like, okay, I can actually make a career and a living doing the thing that I want to be doing, which was cool. And then things kind of ended abruptly with that company. And I found myself in that kind of back against the wall, sink or swim moment, which is how my nutrition coaching business started, because I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to do this on my own. I don't really feel like finding another company out there. And I'm just going to start with what I know. And I didn't really know anything about marketing. I didn't know anything about sales. And I'm a very introverted, shy person. If you ever meet me in a face-to-face setting, you'll be very underwhelmed because I'm very reserved. I kind of like to feel out, how other people act first. And then I can open up, but pretty laid back and reserved. And so my methodology was I feel more comfortable writing than I do talking to people or getting on video or doing content the way that it was being taught. All the stuff that I saw on social media felt very intimidating. And I'm like, I'm not going to compete with these people over here who are just crushing it with entertaining content. I'm just going to be in my little corner of the internet writing emails. And that was how I started from day one. I started my business August 1st of 2018. And I started writing an email every day, Monday through Friday. And I started getting people to respond to those emails and people signing up for coaching through those emails. And here we are, 7 years later almost. And I haven't missed a day. I write every Monday through Friday still. And that was my nutrition coaching business scaled from 0 to, we did 500K in our first year of business. And it was 99% through email marketing. I hadn't started my podcast yet. Then tacking on the podcast, then that elevated to the next level, but it was all through email. And I just got very quick feedback that people were enjoying what I was writing and they were resonating with my story and all the stuff that I was talking about. And at that point, it was all just through word of mouth and just sharing it with other people and getting those referrals in. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to actually learn a kind of a system here because in the beginning it was really just random, just telling my story and sharing insights and things that I was going through and people were relating to that. But then I'm like, I should probably develop some kind of a structure and system and method to the madness. And that's kind of how it's evolved over the years and what I've been able to teach other people to do.
Yeah, man. And I love all the testimonials that you've got too with people that you've helped. I'm a big testimonial guy. Like I guarantee that when people clicked on to this episode, the first audio they always hear on my podcast is a happy client testimonial audio. I don't run an ad or anything like that. It's always client testimonial. So I love, uh, especially in the health space. Like I grew up in the health space as well. And I always used to talk, that okay, you can go look at my competitor's website and all you see is they are very good looking individuals and they have pictures of themselves everywhere. Whereas you walk into my 8,000 square foot studio, we wallpapered the walls with before and after pictures. There's a difference. So anyway, I love what you're doing with all this. I want to unpack it. I think the first place I'm curious is the 5 day per week cadence versus like a once per week cadence. I know there's no real like wrong or right answer, but why did you go 5 days per week versus like a one day per week? Do you call it email marketing or is it a newsletter? Like, I'm interested in like nuances of all those things. So let's talk about 5 days versus 1 days and see where it goes from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I just call it email marketing. I think newsletter kind of got a bad reputation because it's so information focused and that's not really what people want to consume. And we can get into like the actual, meat and potatoes of what makes a compelling email. But I started with 5 for no other reason than I just wanted to see what happens. And I like to get fast data. So that's my whole thing is I'm not afraid to try things and fail. And I prefer to fail faster. And the quicker that I can get data, then I feel more comfortable with the next decision. So I don't like taking this slow. I'm a pretty impatient person, and that sometimes plays to my advantage and it sometimes is a disadvantage. But in that particular instance, it was just I want to see what happens faster. So I'm going to send an email every single day during the week. And that allowed me to learn very quickly what was happening with my email open rates and how many people were clicking on application links and how many people were sharing in all that stuff and what the growth looked like versus a once a week. I just felt like the process was going to be way too slow for my impatience. And so that's typically how I operate with a lot of things. I like to find out quickly what the data tells me. And I talk to coaches all the time. And I always say, your data is better than anyone's opinion. So let's find out. We can have all the best laid theories in the world, but let's find out what really happens in application. And that was just what I wanted to do with the email. So that there was no, again, it was a happy accident. I didn't have any foresight that email marketing was like this hidden gem. And still a lot of people ignore it, even though data, just looking at the ROI on email, if you can go into Google and search ROI from email marketing and pick any year and it outperforms every other channel. And it's typically not even close. I didn't have that information at the time. It was just, this is how I prefer to communicate. So let me just try it and see what happens. And it was just a fortunate thing that I did from day one.
Yeah. So I have so many questions. I'm just trying to like sort through and wade through all the options of where we can take this choose our adventure conversation here. I guess one thing I'm really interested on, and I have a feeling of what the answer is going to be, but I know a lot of my listeners are like, well, how many people should I get on my list before I start doing email marketing or newsletter marketing weekly and things like that? So, I mean, it kind of sounded like you just started doing this and there was no like, I'm going to build
Right.
1,000 people on my list. Like how many people were actually on your list when you started cranking out 5 emails a week?
Maybe like 50. So it was just from like clients and people that I had relationships with and was able to start there. Actually, speaking of testimonials, I have an ad running right now for my email membership. And it literally says, "Hey, Mike, I'm not sure if this is the place to share this, but I only have 14 people on my list. I used one of your templates and already converted a client paid in full. Thanks so much." That's the whole ad. It's just the screenshot
Yes.
of the message that he sent me because it overcomes the objection of I don't have a big enough list. I'm like, here's a guy who started with 14 people. If you can't find 14 people to join your email list, then we've got other things to talk about. But that's it. It was just a 14-person list. And he didn't wait. He didn't say, oh, I need to get this to 100 or 200. It was just, I'm going to start now because it's better to start when you have less people because you get to work out the ugly reps.
Yep.
And and get those things out. Like I have some people who come to me and they're like, I've got 10,000 people on my list. I've never sent them an email. I'm like, all right, well, now we've got some work to do because we actually have to revive that list. And for somebody who's starting with a smaller list, it's actually better. We can just, get off on the right foot and then build from there.
Yeah, I found the same thing. I tell people all the time. I do a weekly newsletter, and I have been doing that every single week since 2018. And I started with 7 people. I think 3 of those emails were my own emails, just like the various, like my personal email, my other work email. So really like 4 people were getting that newsletter, and it slowly started to build. But just like you said, like you got to just get started. It's like ready. Same as podcasting. It's content creation. It's ready, fire, aim, and we get better and better. So I totally agree with you there. Now, I want to know key features of an email that converts readers into clients. What are you looking for when you're coaching and consulting with your people in your program? What key elements or things from your own email, like, okay, I got to include this, this, and this for sure. That's going to move the needle in the right direction.
Yeah. So we can break this down into different parts, but at the end of the day, the very first thing that I look at is it clear what problem you're solving? That's number one. And I look at that for content in general. And a lot of people struggle with this because if you say, like, if I were to ask like a random coach and I just like pulled them, off the internet, it's like, I follow this person on social media who's a coach. And then I send them a message and I'm like, hey, what problems do you solve? 9 times out of 10, the first thing that they answer is going to be what they do or who they help, not the problems that they solve. And they're different. So a lot of times I'll get the I help statement.
Yeah.
If I have a room full of, I'm doing a workshop and I always ask this question because I always know what the answer is going to be. And I'll be like, can somebody just pop on here and tell me what problems you solve? And somebody real confident will raise their hand and be like, yeah, come on. Like, I help women over 40, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, that's what you do. That's not the problem that you solve. And then they're like, oh, okay, let me think about this. And they have a hard time pulling that. So if I can't tell right away within the first 2 lines of your email what problem we're talking about, you've already lost the reader for the most part. There's exceptions to that if you're like a really good storyteller, but that's rare. So
Right.
for the most part, that's number one. What problem are you solving? And then to get it to like really hit home, we have to be very specific and not broad. So solving the problem of like somebody having a slow metabolism, and most of my references are going to be in the health and fitness space. Solving the problem of a slow metabolism is a very broad problem. We can get more specific. So even for the person who knows who they help and they're like, I help, entrepreneurs balance their busy schedules while still achieving the body they desire, right? That's what you do. But then when they get into the problems they solve, they're just talking about fat loss. And now they're appealing to everybody. And you don't want to appeal to everybody. You want to be very specific. But if I can help you solve the problem of what to eat during a team dinner when you're, like you're an entrepreneur and you have a staff meeting and you order in and you've got lunch, at your work event or whatever, like these are hyper specific. So now I'm talking about very specific problems that only appeal to a certain, subset of people, which is what we want. And then if I can give you a tangible solution to that problem, now I've got you as a consistent reader. And all we're doing is the analogy that I give with, or the visualization I give with the email is it's a conveyor belt. So somebody subscribes to your list, you've got them on the conveyor belt, and we want to move them along the conveyor belt until they become a client. And as we continue to build trust along the way that we do that is we solve these little micro problems that builds more trust that, hey, like Adam actually knows what he's talking about. He's been really helpful. And all of a sudden the logical choice when I'm in that moment of, you know what, I really need help with this. Well, of course I'm going to go to Adam because he's already proven that he can solve these problems for me. I'm sure you do the same thing with, how to start a podcast and the topics to talk about and these little micro problems that all podcast hosts struggle with. And you can solve those little problems for them. And all of a sudden it's like, man, I really need some help starting my podcast. Of course, I'm going to go to Adam because he's already shown me that he can solve the problems that I'm struggling with. And when you can really connect it, when the person reading it is like, man, that just happened to me, or like, that was just my Wednesday or my Thursday. And they're thinking back to the moment where they felt that problem. They're like, I was just at a team dinner and I had no idea what to eat to stay consistent with my goals. And now here you are showing up in their inbox, solving that specific problem. That's when we start to convert through email very consistently.
Nice. I mean, I think we tend to, as content creators, we tend to overcomplicate it and we get in our head about it. I mean, would you agree with that? Like, I feel like I can just hear my listeners' thought pattern right now going, okay, 5 days a week. And here's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to have all these different things. I feel like, especially if you're going to go at a 5 day week cadence, you need to err on the side of being super simple, shorter, you know, talk about the problem and not have like all this like robust different segments of your email and all this stuff. I mean, am I thinking on the right lines here, Mike?
Yeah, keep it simple. And don't start with 5 days a week, by the way. Start with one and prove that you can be consistent with one. And then earn your way up to two, three. Most people stick around three per week. The coaches that I work with and that I mentor, we typically hang out around 3 times per week. Some of them will increase it up to five, but three per week is a really good cadence for a lot of people. But I always start with what can you stay consistent with, and prove that you can stay consistent, because I want it to get to the point where your email list, your audience that's on your email list, actually knows the exact date and time that the email is going to hit their inbox and they look forward to it. So that was how I knew. One of the biggest signs for me when I knew I was onto something was when I had a CRM issue. This was about maybe a year and a half into my business, daily emails Monday through Friday. And then I had a CRM issue where it delayed the send. So normally it was hitting at 9 a.m. Eastern, and all of a sudden it's 11:30 and my email hasn't hit the inbox yet. I got like 10 messages, which may not seem like a lot, but it was like 10 people who were like, "Where's your email? What happened to the email this morning?
Are you okay?"
They're like, "We look forward to these emails and it's not here." And I was like, "Oh, I'm onto something." There's an expectation now that every day, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern, the email is going to hit their inbox. And the people that are the regular readers that are actually like they're anticipating that. So you kind of condition them like this is when it's going to release. Start with once a week. And even if it's that every Monday at 9 a.m. or whatever time you choose, you've now set the expectation that you follow through. Like this is you're consistent. You're going to show up every single week. And then once that feels easy, then you can kick it up to 2 or 3 times a week from there. But that's the biggest thing. Like consistency is number one. And then we can start to optimize what we're doing. And then there's different layers that we can add on to the whole problem solving formula. I actually have a whole like framework that I use for my emails to structure them a certain way so that they convert. But again, we got to like earn our way up to the more advanced tactics.
So with you personally, with your 5 days a week, are you selling on all five? Are you like, hey, click here to, is it a direct sale most of the time? Is it, hey, let's talk about discovery calls and let's talk about what you're actually doing and then maybe where you start your clients to and kind of bridge the gap?
Yeah. So again, this is something that I've gotten a lot of data on because I love to test things and see how far I can push the limit, where things break down and that type of stuff. So it was about January of 2021, and I developed this framework. I called it the belief shifting framework. And I was like, I want to see if I can take somebody from, I'm going to present the problem, I'm going to highlight what they've already tried or what they're currently doing, why that's not working, and then give them the solution that I recommend. And then as a final note, I'm going to attach that solution back to my coaching program and make a call to action where even if they didn't take the call to action, they've still gotten a tangible solution. So they don't need to follow through. They can follow the email, go implement, and be perfectly fine. Or it's a logical next step of like, okay, I can see how this solution is part of a bigger picture program. Let me find out what that's all about. And I wanted to test how that would work. So I did that every single day with the same exact structure. Like, here's the problem that we're going to be solving. Here's what you're currently doing or what you've tried in the past. Here's why that doesn't work. Here's what to do instead. And by the way, this is how this particular solution fits into our coaching program, which does this, this, and this. If you're interested, hit reply or follow this link to fill out an application. And that was when I hit my first ever 6-figure month, was February of 2021, all through email. 6-figure month. And then I had never dropped below that. And I just kept doing the exact same thing. And then I was like, all right, I've proven that this works. And then I tested it with my coaching When I started to work with other coaches and helping them with their email, I did the same exact thing. I'm like, all right, maybe different audience, right? One was talking to, I primarily work with women when it comes to fitness and nutrition goals. And then I work with all nutrition and fitness coaches on helping them scale and grow their businesses primarily through email marketing. Um, so I wanted to test the same thing with a different audience, and the exact same result happened. If I could show that there was a clear solution where I highlight a real problem that they're facing and I show them what they've tried and why that doesn't work and what to do instead, and then how that fits into my coaching program, and then I drop the call to action. You could do that every single day, but I don't recommend it because you have to really be skilled in that way of writing copy. And like a lot of coaches think that they're giving a solution, but they're not really giving a solution. And so that's where I was like, all right, let's set a better cadence for everybody else. And now what I recommend is once, depending on how frequent, let's just say somebody's sending 3 emails a week. Once a week, you can add in a soft call to action as long as it fits that criteria. Real problem, you highlight what they've tried or what they're currently doing, why that doesn't work, and what to do instead, and then how that fits into your coaching program or whatever it is you're selling. And then a casual, if you're interested in learning how that works within our program, like here's the call to action once a week. And then once a month, I recommend a direct offer through email that is just straight up like, hey, we have this program. Here's what it is. Here's who it's for. Here's exactly how it works. Here's everything you get in the program. If you're interested, here's how you take advantage of it.
Okay. Dude, let me just tell you, I appreciate how specific you are, because every once in a while I bring somebody on and they're like, well, I will tell you a very high level answer of this and not get into any details because I want to sell your audience my details. So what you just dropped, like you said, people can take that and go implement it. But, whether they're hiring somebody like yourself or somebody like me, I do the same thing. I drop actionable steps on my podcast. And even though all the experts tell us not to do that, like your content is the why and they pay you for the how. I'm like, I drop a lot of how in my stuff, but people hire me to how faster or to how better.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So I just want to say I appreciate what you just did there, man. It's great.
Yeah, I'm of the same belief as you. Like, tell people everything. Don't hold back. Don't gatekeep. I think that we're in a place where trust is very low in the marketplace in general, and rightfully so. There's a lot of people making bold promises that don't deliver. Like the claims just keep getting crazier and crazier, and we're skeptical as consumers, and we should be. So to bridge that trust gap, tell people everything. Let them go see for them. There's nothing more valuable from a trust perspective than for me to be like, go do this thing right now and come back in like an hour and tell me how it went. I'll do that. I'll be like, have a messenger conversation. And I'll be like, here's the email I want you to send to your list. Send it and then come back to me and tell me how it went. I have a screenshot right now of somebody who's like, here are the replies that I got. I'm like, great. Now we know that your email list isn't dead. Like you thought you couldn't get replies. It just the message wasn't connecting. Now we figured it out. Okay, great. Now here's the next step. And then at some point they're going to be like, this is super helpful. How do I work with you? That's the logical. Like I said, I'm introverted. You put me on a sales call, I'm useless. When you're like, no, if the person doesn't know me, they've never gone through any of my content, they don't know anything about me, I am completely useless on a sales call. So my strategy is I'm going to give you as much as I possibly can on the front end. So then you either take it and run with it and are successful and I've done my job, or like you mentioned, you want help with speed of execution. You're like, I want somebody to tell me if I'm doing this right, to look over my shoulder, to help me implement, give me feedback. Great. Now you can take the next step with me from a coaching standpoint. I can't stand the whole hide the how or gatekeep information.
Yeah.
It just never sat well with me.
I hate admitting this, but I have a embarrassingly low closing rate when people are referred to me. If they haven't, like you said, if they haven't listened to any of my content or read any of my content, and their best friend is like, oh, Adam's the best, blah, blah, and they refer them for a consultation, like almost nobody. It's crazy. And I'm like, this is embarrassing. I suck at sales too, but I feel like in online business in that ecosystem, I feel a tide turning a little bit where there are certain people that are just really good at sales and they don't deliver. We've all kind of fallen victim to that before. And I feel like people are starting to get savvy to that. Any thoughts on that?
I think so too. I think it's absolutely shifting. I think that the people that are going to win in this, I've been calling it a trust recession, are the people that can showcase that you like. I want to be able to know what I'm getting. I've made this mistake before as a consumer where I buy, into a mentorship or a business coaching program, and I don't really know what I'm getting, but they were just really good at selling me. And then I get on the inside, I'm like, oh, this is not at all in alignment. And now that experience has led me to, I need to know exactly what I'm getting myself into before I make a purchase. So I think the people that are doing more of that, even just like I'll let people join. Like I do coaching calls for my membership group, and sometimes I'll just reach out to my audience, my email list, like open call. Anybody who wants to join. Normally this is for my paid community, but anybody can come see how we conduct our call. Like, I want you to be on the inside so you have a real taste of what it's like to be on a coaching call with us. And that is a great experience. Is this your vibe? Is it not? Do you resonate or not? Is it helpful? Is it not? So I don't have to sell because you can, kind of make an informed decision from there.
Yeah, we are in alignment with that, Mike. So we're talking to an audience full of podcasters, obviously. How does your show get mixed into your email marketing? So specifically, like, how can a podcaster, a new episode just dropped, how do we weave that into our email marketing to leverage the email list to promote the episode, but also maybe use our podcast to grow our email list? How's that symbiotic relationship working for you?
Yeah, it was a great question. And I really noticed the growth correlated with my podcast. 2021 was like astronomical growth. I went from like, I don't know, it was like 2,000 episodes a week to 20,000 or something like that over that year. And it was when I discovered that belief shifting framework that I outlined for my email. Again, let's see what the data says. Let me test this on the show. So I just started doing that, and it was the same exact formula. And I would just use my email as kind of the guide. And I would go on from like the content, and what I was delivering on the episode is like, all right, here's the problem that we're going to be solving today. And then like, now I know you probably tried this, this, and this, and let me tell you why that didn't work. Here's what to do instead. And that literally took my podcast from basically unknown to kind of put it on the map for fitness and nutrition. And then it was a matter of how frequently can I kind of cross pollinate and giving out opportunities for people. So a simple way to look at that is if there's anything that you can provide, again, sticking with the same theme, a problem that we're solving that it can be actionable. Like I can give you this solution and you can do it right away. And I'm not, again, like I only emphasize that because we often think way too broad. We think the big ambitious goal, like how to scale your business or how to grow your podcast to 100,000 down. Like let's chunk it down and make it simple and actionable. Because then the person can go do it and validate that you actually know what you're talking about. And it's not just theory. So anyway, along those lines, if there's a resource that I can provide you that will accelerate that solution. For example, if I give you my belief shifting email structure and you're like, okay, I got it. I know the structure. And I'm like, do you want my template that walks you through that? Of course, that accelerates the learning curve. So that's an opportunity for me to offer a resource that if I'm talking about this on the podcast, I could say, I have this belief shifting email template. It's free. Here's where you go to get it. And now I can take people from the show onto my email list. And vice versa, if I'm writing an email and I have a concept and I'm like, I'm going to go in way more detail about this on this episode, or I went in way more detail, depending on if it's an upcoming show or a previous show. All you have to do is subscribe. Here's the link to do that, or click this link to listen to the full episode where I break this down in more detail. And that's basically the back and forth that I started doing, the ping pong match between the email list and the podcast in 2021. That was that was like the year that kind of put me on the map where I was like, all right, now I actually have a business. The first couple of years, 2018 through 2020, was just trying to figure out what the hell I was doing. And then 2021 was like, all right, we're legitimate now. We've reached seven figures and people actually are following along and there's an audience there. And that was it. That was the ping pong match between the two.
I think that I tend to struggle because I want to create one podcast episode a week. I do a weekly newsletter, keep a Tuesday, Thursday cadence. And sometimes I struggle where I want to marry them and go, okay, podcast episode topic and newsletter email topic kind of the same thing. But recently I've gone away from that because I want to create two kind of individually valuable topics. And I can talk business, I can talk podcasting. So it's like, oh, if the podcast episode is more businessy, then I'll talk more podcasting stuff and vice versa. I'll tie it in a little bit, but it's not the exact same thing. Um, any thoughts on that for somebody specifically in that situation? If you are sending one email per week and you do have one podcast episode per week, do you like, I just don't want somebody to go, oh, I don't need to listen to the podcast, or I don't need the newsletter because I already heard the other thing. Any thoughts on that?
Yes. So they do need to be distinguishable and equally valuable on their own. So that is like the biggest mistake when it comes to like repurposing content, is if it's a copy paste or if it's almost the exact same thing, then you condition your audience to eliminate one source. Uh, and so when they complement each other, this was a concept called two plow horses. Like if you're trying to communicate with somebody who this works actually really well with like an onboarding experience for if you're onboarding a new client and you kind of want to tackle two different communication channels at once, is you send them an onboarding email and then you text them, I just sent you something to your inbox, right? So now they're complementing each other. And that's the idea of like two plow horses are better, more effective than one. So we do that a lot with all of our like social media channels where you can give, whether that's like a snippet that then the full episode for your podcast gives away more info, or there's just an accelerated version, or like you mentioned, it can be you're solving one problem here, you're solving another problem here, and then you can mention like whatever the next logical step would be. So for example, like if you're like talking about more business on your newsletter, then you're like, I specifically go into detail about how this relates to your podcasting on this episode. So now there can be like a layered version of this. And I'm not sure if that's making sense, but basically
Yeah.
you're able to complement the communication channels without them hijacking each other because it's the exact same thing.
Yeah. I think a lot of podcasters just don't realize. I mean, I'll be like, hey, you're kind of being lazy with this, where they're like, they take their show notes from their podcast and make that their weekly email or newsletter, or their weekly email slash newsletter is basically, hey, new episode just dropped. It's super cool. And so am I. Go get it. And that's, they don't mean to be lazy, but that's like your audience deserves better, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. It's just it doesn't have to be like again, doesn't have to be a whole different topic. It's just there's a way of presenting it where there's either more or less info on one versus the other. There's a, accelerated version, or there's like the next problem. Because every time you solve a problem, you inevitably create a new one.
Mhm.
So what's the next logical step in this? Like if I teach you how to figure out like your, uh, like, like the example for the entrepreneur. All right, teach you how to pick out foods when you're at a corporate event. But now the next problem is you have no idea how to make your own food because you're always ordering out, whatever. The next logical thing is, well, now I'm going to solve this problem on the next episode, or this one I'm going to talk about in my newsletter. So it's just like you're kind of sequencing things
Yeah.
that they need to be on both lists or paying attention to both sources.
Yeah. So, the thing we're going to highlight here, Pod Pals, everybody listening in, is like, if you're going to do this, the key phrase that Mike said was independently valuable. Like they are standalone. They both need to count. Your people want to listen to that weekly episode. They want to consume that weekly or multi-week email. So Mike, one thing that we haven't talked about yet is, well, you've mentioned it a couple times, but we haven't specifically talked about the growth. Like, how do we get more people on our list? Because this is the big thing that so many podcasters are like, I've got 12 people on my list, and it's a really slow snail paced grind. You've mentioned some paid ads. You mentioned, lead magnets from the podcast, but what's the recipe right now that's working pretty well for you?
Yeah, so I look at it as really three sources. You've got your organic, you've got your paid, and you've got your borrowed. And a lot of people ignore that third one, which that's the one that can really exponentially increase your list size, your audience growth, that so many people are afraid to take advantage of, or just like they don't think it'll work for them for whatever reason. So an example of borrowed is I mean, this is a version of this, right? Like you're introducing me to your audience, and this can be done in so many different ways. A podcast, I could offer some kind of a resource and capture some of your audience onto my email list. Or if we wanted to do like a joint training together and there's a landing page for people to sign up on, that's the one that I think most people ignore. As I've put together like health seminars basically where I have a bunch of speakers, and the requirement for them to be a speaker was they had to send out the details of the event to their audience. So now I have 10 people on a panel, and they've all got, various bits of my audience that I want to capture, and I'm putting the whole event together, and they have to send it out, and all of those people that register for the event are now coming onto my email list. That's an example of borrowing somebody else's audience. There's going into somebody's Facebook group to do a training, joint workshops, podcasting together. There's so many different opportunities. And I think, again, a lot of people just are like, well, nobody will say yes to that. I think I've had like 3 no's. I've asked some crazy things, like people who have way bigger audiences than me, and I'm just like, yeah, well, one of the requirements, you got to send this out to your 500,000 followers. They're like, all right, cool. Like, no problem. And it just make the ask. And the worst thing that happens is they say no, and you're on to the next one.
Yeah.
So that's the borrowed version. Organic is you're offering that same resource, lead magnet. I like to call it a resource accelerator because it helps with the mindset of I'm not just creating something that I think is valuable. I'm creating something that specifically accelerates the solution. So
Mhm.
what's the problem that we're solving? What's the resource that accelerates the solution? And that's where you offer that to your organic, when you're doing content, social media, Instagram stories, polls, getting people to raise their hand and say that they want that thing. And then there's the paid version, where we're growing our email list through paid ads, which I have a whole ads ecosystem that I teach that is very different than what most people do with paid ads. That's a whole nother can of worms, but that's like audience growth, email list growth, and making sure that it's low budget ads that actually attract the right people into your world. I do it without like most people go direct to conversion. Like I want to make a sale off of ads. And I look at it as I want an entire ecosystem built with ads where I'm attracting the right people, I'm building trust and nurturing them, and then eventually getting to the place where they're ready to buy. Direct to conversion is very expensive, and that's where the myth of ads cost a lot of money come from. Because yes, if you're trying to go direct to conversion, they're really expensive. But if you understand how to attract the right people with like video ads that are you're not, there's no call to action, there's no buy my stuff, there's just value and problem solving, then you can build a warm audience that you can then retarget, get them on your email list, make them offers, and it's a lot more fluid system.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of my biggest aha moments in the past 18 months, especially, is that you just got to develop that relationship and nurture that relationship with your audience and kind of play the long game. Like you're not like meeting somebody and asking them to marry you right away. It's like, let's have a few dates. Let's stay for a few months. Let's see if you like me and I like you. And then you put that selling via email for me has been so much easier than trying to sell and pitch directly off my podcast. Like going, this episode is sponsored by my super duper program. Go get it right now. Like some people will buy it, but a lot of podcasters are out there with less than 100 people listening to their show every week. And that's going to be even lower. But and when people are listening to podcasts, they're doing other stuff. They're mowing their lawn. They're doing deadlifts. They're out there, walking their dog. They're not going to stop and go, oh, I better buy this thing from Adam in the middle of mowing my lawn. But email, they're on their computer, they're on their phone. They click a button and they can buy right there. So I like what you're saying, Mike.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the way, that's the conveyor belt mindset. We get somebody into our world, they've entered the conveyor belt, and just let it do its thing. Some people will be ready sooner, someone will take longer. Doesn't matter. As long as that conveyor belt's always moving, you're always going to be at a point where people are ready to buy, and then there's going to be a group of people right behind them, and then right behind them, and just keep that thing moving.
Love it. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. I know we got a hard close here, but I want to give you a chance to promote. Let's get some people on your list for my audience here. Like, this is how it works. You're borrowing my audience. Go ahead and borrow them and let them know where to go to dive deeper into your world, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So my coaching program is called The Collective. It's helping you establish and monetize your email list, grow your email list, and then also we get into We kind of have three layers to the whole ecosystem. Email is the foundation. Then the second layer is your organic marketing strategy. And then the third layer is your paid ad strategy. If you did nothing else but just use the emails, because we put all of that stuff into templates, email templates, content templates, landing pages, all the resources, things like that, scripts. We tried to make it as done for you as possible, and it's $97 a month. It's called The Collective. So if you did nothing else but just use the email templates, again, those convert really well. So it takes the formula that we've proven and you just plug in your personal details of like your audience and the way that you coach, and you hit send. If you did nothing else but that, you'd be successful. We also include like your CRM and software and everything that you can optionally use or not. Just depends on if you need that or if you want to just work through like on our Google Drive, you can just copy and paste all the resources that we have. So you can go to 5minuteemails.com, and 5 is spelled out. So it's FIVE, 5minuteemails.com. And the nice part about that is if you go to the page, then you'll kind of be in my world. So you'll start seeing all of my stuff and my content. So you don't even have to join my list, but you'll have the opportunity to join the list. There will be plenty of options for you to see just more in depth of like, I put like my ads and stuff that you get retargeted with. They're full blown like trainings and workshops and things that you can see in depth, really what it's all about. So it takes a lot of pressure off of me to have to, I don't like to talk about myself or my program. I kind of like the content to do the talking for me. So if you just go to that URL, you'll start to see a lot of the stuff pop up.
All right. And I'll make sure I get that link in the episode notes for you all as well. So you can go and support Mike, dive into his world. I'm going to be diving in. You're going to see me in there for sure. All right. Pod pals. This has been a great one, Mike. I appreciate you coming on again. Thank you for just being willing to distribute your knowledge freely and effectively. That means a lot to me. I know it means a lot to my audience.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
All right, Pod Pals. This is a good one. Lots of actionable things to get out there and implement. Hopefully you are enjoying this email building and email marketing content. I am totally obsessed with it. And with that, I'm going to send you out into the world, wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. I will see you on the next episode. If you need a little bit of help with your podcast launch, growth, or monetization strategy, head on over to my website, www.podcastingbusiness.school, and get signed up for a free podcast profit potential discovery call. During this free 20-minute discovery call session, I'm going to analyze your podcasting brand and tell you where I think you're missing on an opportunity for profits. Next, I'm going to tell you exactly what I suggest that you do as your next step. If I've got an offer that would help you accelerate the process, we can discuss working together as well. So head on over to my website, www.podcastingbusiness.school, and click on the Discovery Call button to schedule your free Podcast Profit Potential Discovery Call.